Right, let's go to that now. Are coalition governments failing in contemporary South Africa? That's the question we ask this hour. More recently formed coalitions have not worked out well. We've seen talks between the Johannesburg coalition partners failing ahead of a series of no-confidence motions in the now former Mayor Mpho. Now, is there anything the IEC can do to look after the interests of voters in coalition governments? Well, let's speak now to Tselane, former deputy chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa. And Tselane, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. So I guess that's the main question, right? Is there no way that the IEC can look at legislation? And I keep asking this question because of how many times we've seen ourselves with a new mayor in the city of Johannesburg, because politicians are deciding for residents who gave them a mandate already in November of 2021. That is not being respected. So is there anything that the IEC can do to make sure that that coalition government works?
Good afternoon, myself and to your viewers. I think the problem is not really that of the IEC, but that of the country. Because the mandate of the IEC is in the Constitution, and their responsibility is to organize, manage the elections, to ensure that those elections are free and fair, and then to announce the results of those elections within a specific period. Now, it means we've got to look elsewhere in order to try to find a solution for the coalition arrangement. You may be aware that the Department of Cooperative Affairs has been trying to create some kind of mechanism to try to deal with this challenge at the local government level. But I think the problem is much bigger than that. We have to find a solution in regulation of coalition, and not only deal with local government elections, local government coalitions. And the reason why you've got to look broader than changing the Municipal Structures Act, it is largely because, as we now know, that increasingly there is no one political party that will have the majority in quite a number of areas, including probably at the provincial and local and national level. So you need some kind of mechanism that will be able to regulate local coalitions at all levels.
And, looking at those regulations, would it not work, or would it be against the law if, for instance, political parties are forced to work with each other and we scrap the whole negotiation process when it comes to, coalition governments? For instance, if in the city of Johannesburg there are three parties that, are able to get a 51% together, the top three parties, can it not be legislation that those three parties have to work together, and the one with the highest number will then choose, their mayoral candidate will then sit on that seat, and then negotiations happen only when it comes to the MMC positions?
Not necessarily, even though it's a frustration at the moment. Remember that in electoral process, we always say that each vote does count. So even if you have one vote or one vote in the council, it means in terms of democracy, that vote must still be able to make a difference. And it is currently making a difference for various political parties. But the kind of the arrangement that should actually be enforced in the regulation, one is that political parties must be given a specific period within which to finalize their negotiations. And then once they finalize their negotiations, there's got to be an agreement that will then be deposited with a register of political parties in order for the political parties to adhere to the agreement that they've actually entered into. And we can also introduce something that is already there in the party, in what we call the party lists, where within a year, a political party cannot change its list. So once political parties have entered into an agreement, there must be a provision that says within a year, they cannot actually get out of that relationship in a coalition. But the only way that we can be able to enforce this, if it is there in the regulations, as I am suggesting.
So then it clearly shows that South Africa, the sentiment that South Africa was not ready for a coalition was true then, because clearly we are learning as we go, and there's a lot of people messing up along the way? Because if you look at the city of Johannesburg, service delivery is at its worst.
Absolutely. I mean, we were not ready for the management of coalitions, even though we started in 1994 with Government of National Unity. But it is a Government of National Unity that was meant to really provide some kind of stability during 1994 as a result of the differences between the main political players. But if you look at, for instance, what is happening in Germany, Germany in their last elections, immediately after the elections, they had almost 6 months within which they developed subcommittees that dealt with difficult issues, starting with the economy, the environment, the role of the central bank, and all those things. And they develop a program of action. And then after that, it is then that that particular program is then put to be implemented. Now here, we don't even know what agreement is being reached between the political parties when they enter into coalition. So if we have a party, a regulation of political parties that we've got, like in the case of Kenya, where you have a register of political parties, the agreement is going to be public because then it is deposited with the register of political parties, and then no political party can come in and out of relationship as it wishes.
Yeah. Oh, it's quite concerning, and I don't know if we're being unfair as Johannesburg residents by thinking that maybe even the water shortages that we're seeing currently all over the city is probably because of these coalitions that are not working. But maybe we're not being fair yet in looking at it that deeply. Mr. Tselane, while I still have you, I just have to ask you just one more question pertaining to the amendment bill when it comes to, the electoral bill. The Constitutional Court giving Home Affairs an extension until February. Last year when you and I spoke, you thought that the Constitutional Court should probably just, put the brakes on the amendment for now, just so that we go through elections in 2024 and we don't risk not having elections at all, which would be constitutionally incorrect. But now they've granted them a reprieve until February, which is just next month. Do you think that's enough time?
It is still not enough time, and I don't think there's going to be much that will be achieved. You recall that when we had this conversation, I indicated again that the extension until the end of January was still not going to be sufficient. You require a lot of time in order to be able to deal with quite a number of issues that have actually been raised. So even end of February is not going to be useful. The problem that I foresee, as I indicated previously, is that unfortunately this is also beginning to compromise the capacity to have a smooth election. So the IC's capacity to manage the elections has been immensely compromised by these delays. And I think we will be able to see the effect of this on the day of the elections.
I wonder what's going to happen then, Dr. Tselane. Hopefully it doesn't hamper on us being able to go to the polls next year. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Tselane, the former deputy chairperson of the IEC.